At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and a big shout out, as always, to patrons. Thank you so very much for everything. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you, and especially those who are listening, watching, sharing, supporting, and just everything. It has been awesome. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. I know I sound like a broken record every time I say it, but seriously, I can't thank you enough. This has been such an amazing experience, and we are, I think maybe by the time this one goes out, I will have surpassed episode 400. Which is a milestone in itself, because I started this as a college project back in 2010. 2012 is when the podcast started, and really started sharing more stories, sharing, and it was therapeutic to be able to do it. And I never thought that it would be what it is today, and I'm just very grateful and humbled, and just happy that I'm able to play, you know, a little part in all of your lives, to be able to share these important and powerful 911 stories. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything, as we march towards and surpass episode 400 and continue on. It has been so good. There's a lot of in-person conferences that are starting to pick up and go through. There's more speaking engagements that are going to be coming up, more Imagine Listening sessions that are going to be coming up as well. So make sure to watch out for those. And then, of course, if you're a patron, you are getting the Dispatchers Roundtable, as well as Open Mic Live that happens every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You get audio versions of those. Those are perks for patrons. So again, thank you all so very much. And we're going to jump right in here. I am excited for this guest today. Her name is Vickie, and she is the lead public safety dispatcher out of Banning PD, and is going to be out of California. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. And, you know, just as we were talking before we got started, I was thinking about how we were talking about the weather and stuff. And I'm back in Indiana. no longer in Vegas. Definitely miss Vegas, but not the heat. It's 82 over here. In this room that I'm in, the AC doesn't get in here that much, so it's probably like 92 in here. So it's a little hot, but it's not like it was last week. But it was all worth it. It was a good week to be able to go to an in-person conference and be there with people. I kept telling everyone it was like the first day of school again, when you haven't seen people for a while, and then you go into the school before class starts. You're like, hey, what's going on? You know, you haven't seen people in so long. It was really cool.
Right. I bet. I'm looking forward to that.
Yes. Do you have any conferences that they're going to be heading out to here, soon?
Our CAD, we're with Sunridge Rims. Absolutely love it. Best system ever. And we do our yearly training conference in beautiful Lake Tahoe. So that's in October. So I'm really looking forward to that, because last year we did it online and they did a great job. But I'm really looking forward to being able to network and learn a whole different side. This time I'm going not much as a dispatch supervisor, but more for the IT backend side.
That is excellent. There's so much that you can get out of these conferences. The networking alone, right, is always amazing. But of course, whatever it is that someone is teaching, powerful stories, the technology, all of it, it just kind of fills your cup, right? And when you go back to the center, you're ready to implement certain things, or also share with those that you work with to say, look, I learned this. It might have been something that you guys had, that you all had been talking about before, and then you find out the answer, like, I got it. And you're able to bring it back and go from there.
Right. I get so charged up. I get so excited. I come back and I just have like all this information, and I just want to share it with everybody. And I want everybody to be as excited as I am. And sometimes it's not always like that, but a lot of times it is.
That is always good to be able to have, a group like that. Even when you have the one person that's like, okay, shut up. We get it. It was cool. It was fun. What is it that we're going to be learning? Because, they wish they were there too.
Yeah, we're all sure you were in Tahoe.
Right. Yeah.
I'm in class all day long inside.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of I remember before I made my switch over and I would go to conferences, a couple coworkers would say, "Are you going to all your sessions?" And like, yeah, I am. Like, there's some interesting stuff there. The very first time I went to a conference, I'll admit I didn't take it as seriously, because I thought, some of these people, maybe they don't know really what they're talking about or this or that. So I remember skipping out on a couple sessions, and then I kept hearing about how good those sessions were, and I thought, I just did myself a disservice. I never did it again. I've gone to all the sessions that I wanted to go to, because I did learn more, and I learned from that mistake of not going, because I had that feeling of, man, now I really do wish I would have gone. That sucks, and I missed it. And sometimes it happens like that.
I get really frustrated when they have so many great topics, and then there's just like this one you can't fit in. You need to start at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I know that's like an overachiever in me, but like, I really want to get all 8 classes today, because I need all of that to recharge me, or to be able to take that back to my people. So it's like, yeah, thanks for the input, but we're not going to start classes at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but also, when you have, let's say, 4 or 5 sessions that are going on at the exact same time, and then you only get to pick one. And some of them you might get lucky where they will have an encore session, and you can get it on another day. But sometimes that's it. It's one and done. And you don't get to see them again until who knows when that happens. And so it's hard sometimes, when you're going to a conference, whether it be state or nationally, and you have all these that are on at the same time, and then you have to make a choice.
Really put your networking skills into play, and like at that happy hour, or that little brunch area, kind of be like, who was in that class, or did you get to attend that? Can I get your PowerPoint? Or maybe we can connect later on, and you can kind of give me an overview of what you got out of it. And then you end up getting to meet new people. I love meeting new people, picking their brains. And I think that we all have such a hard job, and we're all kind of like the dispatch lab. We all need certain things, and why start from scratch when we're already understaffed and inundated with so much other work, when we have somebody who's already put forth that effort, or maybe you have a document or something that you could share with someone else, and they're not having to spend 4 or 5 or 6 hours trying to create that document. It's just an amazing, I love sharing and networking. It's my thing. It's my jam.
That is awesome right there, because not a lot of people will put forth some of that effort. I think that's why a lot of the virtual conferences this past year have also been good, because I think that there's some, right, who normally wouldn't ask certain questions, or just be willing to walk up to someone and ask something, because they might be more of an introvert, right? So, but virtually, there really wasn't that fear. A lot of people were actually asking tons of questions, and there was all these resources, so that was awesome. And virtually it is good as well, but in person, it's something about like you're talking, how you go and meet people and speak to them, and get some of those protocols, some of those procedures, because we're all going through pretty much the same thing, but we're dealing with it in different ways. And it's always good to be able to pick someone's brain and realize, okay, what I was doing, there's more than one way to do it, and we're able to get to it, maybe an easier way, or whichever. But it's just that learning, is that those light bulb moments that just kind of connects us as well in the same profession.
What I really liked about the online was that you had a lot of sidebar, which sometimes could probably be, if you're the person presenting, maybe you think that's rude, but people actually were reaching out to other people, and when you make a comment, they were like reiterating your comment, or like, hey, I have something that could help you with that, or here's my email, or here's this, where you wouldn't have that opportunity until after the class, and then everybody's rushing off to be the first one in like the lunch line, or you have that mentality of so I love when instructors do this. So if you're an instructor and you do classes in person, I love when you come in and you have an assigned seat, because I love that people from the same agency cannot group together. I like
yes.
when you sit somewhere else, or just telling you, please sit next to somebody you don't know, because the perspective that you get, what your own agency thinks. And your troubleshooting has already gone over and over and over trying to figure out something, but now you're sitting with somebody who might have a whole different perspective. Or I went to this one class, which was really hilarious, because the instructor knew me, and they were running these classes as if, hey, we're going to put this class out, but we're inviting a bunch of supervisors. We want you to preview the class, and then we're going to critique the class. Like, every couple of hours we're going to go through, what did you like about this part of the instruction? What did you think could be changed out before it's presented to an actual classroom of people? And she had an OG table. So I was like, what's that? It's labeled OG, but my name was on it. It's like, so my name and a guy from like Garden Grove Police Department here in California was on it. And we're like, what? So we sit there and we're like, what? Like, yeah, that's the OG table. Anybody over 25 years, you guys are the OGs. So my class is going to ask you things. So we were like the little king and queen of the class for like half the day, which was really fun, because I'm like, wait a minute. I remember when like I was 21 starting patrol, and now I'm like an OG. Whoa.
That is a cool moment, right? Because you've reached that level and stuff. That I'm gonna have to remember that. That's pretty cool. That, and just making sure that people are sitting with others that they didn't come here with, or go there with, rather. I've never done that before. I think I've seen Adam Tim do it when he was doing the Healthy Dispatcher still, and maybe another one, but I haven't done it myself. I think that is really good. It's a really good idea to be able to do that, as you were saying, to get that different dynamic, and how people are working, just any other situation that is going on there. But very cool as well to have that OG table, the two of you there, and everyone just kind of, asking, is that kind of how it went down then? Like the instructor had a certain topic, and they went to you for some of those questions. How did that work?
So no, they had the class pretty much done. And then they would go into, this is how we start the introduction, like how do you get people to know each other, and not just standing up giving your name and experience. We did a circle type exercise where we had to pair up with somebody we didn't know, and then we had 5 minutes to learn certain things about them, and then we had to introduce them to the rest of the class, which I really like that. But I'm very outgoing, so I could see where maybe that would be intimidating if you weren't. But it also helps bring you out of your shell.
Yes.
And then, like, about halfway through, we kind of covered what went on, and we would just take notes like, hey, that exercise really didn't go the way it should have went. Like, or that exercise could have went a little bit better if you would have did this. Like, it took too much time out of your instruction time. So we really got to like critique the class before they went live with the class with other people. And I really liked that. And this is a training network that this was on, where they have like 5 or 6 different instructors and they train all different things. But I really like the idea of picking people who does the job and who sit through classes before, because you kind of know, like, oh, here we go with this again, or here we go with that again. And the other thing that I really like is that when you go to a class and they kind of maybe separate you, not according to where you work, but more of like your years of experience. So you don't have all of the 1, 2, 3 years sitting all together on one side of the class when you do exercises, because what amount of knowledge do they have compared to all the people with like 10 to 20 years of experience? So you're mixing it up. So in your group, like I took an active shooter in San Diego years and years ago, but I loved it because, you have a 1 year, a 3 year, a 5 year, a 20 year. So now you're drawing from all the experiences we've already had. And you're not just having a 1 and 3 and 5 year who maybe hasn't ever experienced any major critical incident or been in charge of in a critical incident planning situation. So, ooh, my light just went on.
I was saying, did your light just turn off?
Raise your hand and it'll come back on. So yeah.
That's great. I'm going to leave that in there. that was awesome. For those listening to the audio right now, her light just turned off. What's
Trying
funny?
To be cost efficient.
Yeah, what's funny really quick before we get into your story and how you got your start and everything in public safety, the company that I used to work for in digital, before I made my change in the office that I was in, that would happen sometimes. The light would turn off and I wouldn't see anyone. No one would ever come in or anything. And I would see them later and they would say, "You were in there the whole time?" I'm like, yeah. My light was off. They said, "Were you asleep? Were you not moving?" I was like, well, it would turn back on once I started moving, but people just didn't really pay attention.
Yeah, sometimes I'll get tasking and I don't really get to work in my office very much because we're very short staffed. So I physically work the desk and I'm training right now. But I have these little side windows and I have shutters in them or shades in them, but you can see the glow of the light. And if I'm not in there, then my captain will walk by and then he kind of just knocks and opens the door. And I'm like, "I'm in here," but I was like really in a thought. So I didn't have time to like raise my hands up like this to get my light to come back on. Yes, I'm not moving enough, or where the sensors at's over on the other wall.
Yeah, like I am awake. I'm doing stuff in here. Oh, that is funny. Well, so you mentioned a little bit ago, we're talking about training and thinking, reflecting on, when you started and all. How did you get your start? How did you get started in public safety? Because you started out as a reserve first, right? Before going into dispatch?
Yeah, I like to say that I had like 35 years of experience because it's kind of a funny but a cool story, which I think kind of makes me the person that I am today. So in 1986, the church that I attended, our church youth leader that was in our youth group, we had a huge youth group, like 150 kids for junior high school. And he was a homicide detective for the sheriff's department. So we found this out, a couple months in, and he's like, "How would you guys like to tour like the crime lab? Because I'm really interested in helping you guys find your passion, because, God says that we're here on earth to be able to serve and use our talents to help people." So he goes, sometimes as young kids, you don't really know where that's at. So, part of what I want to do for you guys is help you find where your passion is to serve other people. So I really just that day that he said that, it really touched my heart because I'm a real emotional person, and I was raised in a Southern family. So, we're always cooking for people, and, my mama was taking care of people when they were sick, and, taking over the chicken soup and the cake to the new neighbor type of thing. So much hospitality. And I was like, how can you really do that and have a job?
Mm-hmm.
And then as we went on the tour of the crime lab, and it's like, oh yeah, I want to be in forensics. Well, hello, you have to be smart in like science for that. So as I got into high school and struggled in chem a little bit, I was like, the forensic thing's not for me. But what he did do for me was tell me, I love where your heart is for service, and I really think you should be part of our Explorer program. And so the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department had an amazing Explorer program. I think when I first came in there, we already had like 65 kids. So I started when I was like 14. I loved how passionately he talked about what our assignment was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I started in at that time was that I want to be so passionate about serving people. I just didn't know where it was at. Was it going to be in dispatch? Was it going to be a canine officer? Was it going to be a patrol officer? The great thing about the Explorer program where I came from was every time we had a meeting, we had a different aspect of law enforcement. We had the prosecutor, we had the forensic tech, we had the canine officer. We were introduced to so much. So like maybe being a cop isn't your thing, but you know what? To serve people and be part of the justice is so much bigger than just what goes on patrol. So I really got just this huge eye-opening to all these different areas of things that I would like to do. So he always talked about being able to protect and serve people who had the inability to protect themselves. And I really liked that. I grew up very much a tomboy. And I played lots of sports. I had no girls really in my neighborhood my age, so I was always out playing flag football or kickball or picking up ants or doing something. And I don't know, I just said, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to stand up for people and I want to protect people. Well, my dad was in the military. We're from the South, so we always knew how to like shoot guns, and we were very well versed on how to protect ourselves. I have no brothers, so we were all taught how to change a tire and shoot guns and do stuff like that. And I did live a really sheltered life. I grew up in San Bernardino, which is really crazy. If you look it up, it's probably like the murder capital of like the area of where we live right now. But at that time, I knew bad things were going on, but where I lived in my neighborhood, I kind of want to call it like the Sandlot neighborhood. Like everybody knew everybody. You couldn't really get away with anything because all the parents would tell on you. I was afraid because my dad's from the South. So, he had that keep on trucking belt that was leather, not fire. Rumor says I'm the youngest, so I didn't really have to get to see it. I just took my sister's word for it.
You got lucky then.
I did. But I think I had a healthy fear of just the love for my dad and his abilities to punish. I lived a pretty sheltered life, I guess. I didn't get in any trouble. I stayed really involved in sports, and school and student government. But when he encouraged me to do that, it was really life-changing for me because I think it was living in a city like that. And I mean, sports also was very helpful, but I think it was just a huge impact on my life that changed me forever because you're constantly surrounded by people who are selflessly giving of themselves to people. Mm-hmm. And back then, like in the 80s, like explorers got to do a lot of stuff. Like, I don't even know if I can say because everybody's probably retired that trained me anyway. So I don't think they can get fired. But we did a lot of hands-on stuff that made you realize that this is a life or death situation. Mm-hmm. Like as an explorer, I've seen people shot. I've seen people set themselves on fire, like before I even got into law enforcement. So I think that just being around people, their brass there was amazing. They were all about mentoring kids and bringing up their department like from within. And I think that's what started my trajectory of where I wanted to be, even though I didn't really know where I wanted to be. So fast forward, I graduated high school and I went to work at the juvenile hall as a teacher's aide. and like a career specialist. So I worked in an ROP program where these kids who had offended numerous times, they could go in and learn how to go on a job interview. And we would tape, like when videotapes first kind of came out, we would videotape them on mock interviews so that they would have the courage to go on an interview, to know how to fill out an application. We would do a little skill test, kind of like the ASVAB, that would tell them what they were good at. I really enjoyed that. It was hard though, because I was 18, just out of high school, young, and all the offenders are like 17 and 18 male offenders. But they were accepted into this program where they had to live there. So it was a locked facility where they lived within juvenile hall. But I really enjoyed that. But I did know that probation was not my thing. So I continued to attend college, working for the county schools. They helped me pay for school because my family wasn't very wealthy. I mean, my dad was a truck driver. And then I decided I'm going to go to the Sheriff's Academy. The captain that was my Explorer captain was like, let's do it. You want to go? Let's do it. Well, at that time, hundreds of people would apply for a position to be able to be sent to the academy. And you would test with 500 or 600 people. And he goes, well, until we can get you there, why don't you start as a reserve? So let's go through the Reserve Academy, which was like a 3, a 2, and then the one's like the formal academy where you kind of get yelled at and they give you a little mock phase of what it's really going to be like. And it's for people who work, because you went at night and then you went and did your tactical stuff on Saturdays. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this because this is going to be able to tell me, what I want to do. And then even if I choose something else, I can always serve as a reserve. So then as I started with my agency, I started with Beaumont PD, which is our sister agency here. I started realizing that they were single dispatch and there was nobody to let the girls, at that time we didn't have any men, use the restroom. So they're like, hey, if I was working patrol, could you come in and like cover the desk for like 2 minutes so I could go to the bathroom? So I'm like, sure. So then they're like, okay, just do this to start a traffic stop. Just do that. Push there to talk, whatever. And that's kind of how it started. So I'm working as a reserve. I love patrol, but then I became a mom. So now my perspective started going around like, do I really want to put myself in a situation like where I might not come home? Or, hey, this is a pretty good option. Now I would never say that. Dispatch is not an option. Dispatch rocks. And it's not an option just because something else doesn't work out. It should be it should be a first choice. But back then that wasn't really pushed that way. It's kind of like, well, you don't really make it in patrol. Let's see if you could work in dispatch. But so I started filling in and they're like, hey, could we hire you like contractually? You're going to make a lot of money if you just kind of fill in a day here and a day there if we need it, to kind of be like overtime. We'll work around your schedule. So I said, sure. So they just kind of like threw me in there. Like the first day I was there, it was like, okay, here you go. You're going to do fine. And and I think that the ability to talk on the radio, understand what the printouts meant, and understand the verbiage was extremely helpful. I don't know how people learned back then because there was no formal dispatch training book at that time, which was 1995. Our agency didn't have really anything. It's kind of just like, let me just think of what we do and we'll go over it with you. So I was just like, hey, I guess I can come in. So then I was making like really good money. I mean, back then I think it was like $39 an hour for contractual because they didn't have to pay you benefits. So they're paying you by the hour. You're like a contracted employee for the city.
Yeah.
So I don't know anybody who does that now except for people who job share maybe. But in 1995, my lieutenant came to me and said, hey, I know that you're like working 2 or 3 jobs, being a mom, and you're also putting in your time as a reserve here. So we want to offer you a job as a full-time dispatcher, and then you can quit. I was working as a municipal police officer in San Bernardino with a gun, but limited powers. I was working still at juvenile hall, and then I was like doing my gig on the side, which was like I worked for a drug and alcohol rehab marketer. So I would type up her reports at night that would go to her clients. And that's how she knew how to bill, like what she did, her travels, kept track of her receipts and so forth. So I was really kind of driving myself crazy, balancing all 3. So I was like, I don't know, like, all right, let's do it. So I went through the little interview, and like a week they hired me because my background was already done as a reserve. So they really didn't have that much to do. And I don't really know, maybe the backgrounds weren't as extensive then as they are now. But so I started with my department. I had no formal training. Like I said, no training book. It was kind of like, hey, here's the Klutz manuals. Double check all of your entries. Have the reports copied and the CIIs and the driver's licenses printed out for the filing for the DA in the morning, because we were a very small agency, so we didn't have a separate records department. So we had collateral duties. Oh, don't forget to enter citations and process accident report requests on your downtime. And I went on a graveyard shift by myself. Bye, have a good night, Vickie. Like, okay. Woo.
What?
Yeah, let's do this. Like, okay. Yeah, like here you
Threw
go.
you in.
So we worked single dispatch at that time. It was a huge eye opener for me, just filling in an hour here, an hour there, or a mid shift between shifts so people could go to meetings or so forth. So I had to just become super resourceful. I read that Klutz manual from front to finish because we had to do all the entries. We didn't have a records department, and we didn't have mass screens then either to fill in. Like when you're entering a car, it was like dot, dash, dash, dot, underscore, and get one dot wrong, one dot, and you would just lose your mind because then you got to start all over again because you're doing this free form. And, you know, we would take 2 or 3 stolen cars a night. It would take a really long time to get stuff done. So one night I'm like, this is it. I need some help. I don't know what to do. I got a mechanical tree shaker stolen and a combine harvester because, you know, we have a little bit of farmland around here and some farms. So it's like, nowhere in this dang Klutz book does it say a mechanical tree shaker. And you couldn't just call up anybody. You know, it's kind of like now because of COVID, you can't just call up DOJ and say, help me out, because there's nobody to answer at nighttime.
Right.
So I ended up making really good friends with the lady who worked night shift at this agency. And she was so sweet. She's since passed on. I did have an opportunity to work with her a little bit while she was here. She was like, give me a minute. She goes, go to the page 42 on here. Now, it won't take it this way, but it'll take it this way. It doesn't tell you that you can't put it this way, but I'm going to tell you because I entered a tree shaker 2 years ago and I still have my notes. I was like, what the heck? So I became so thankful for this lady, and we worked the same shift, and she just poured into me. And then I'm like, this is what it's all about. Going back to Pastor Jim, pouring into us, telling us to find our passion. Okay, this person had a passion not to keep all the knowledge to herself, but you know what? Why should somebody else have to spend 5 hours looking for how to enter a mechanical tree shaker when I have it in my Nifty 50 file right here? Same thing that's going on with the dispatch lab right now, right? It's like foreplay it up, you know, 28 years later. This is what it's all about. So I don't know. I just started acclimating. I guess the radio lingo, knowing verbal judo was super helpful because they didn't teach verbal judo to dispatchers back then, but they taught it to you in the academy, and also how to just assist people. So on top of all the other duties that we had to do, they're like, hey, you're reserved. So how about when you're not so busy, if we get calls and our units are a little bit busy, you could actually just take the report over the phone. Wait, while I'm dispatching, working the radio, working the phone, let me just take a past theft report over the phone.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
this is how it happened. So it got crazy, you know, some public assist, some information. I knew a lot about Klutz from being a reserve because we had an excellent Klutz trainer there. Props up to Lydia at Las Vegas. She taught us a lot from the patrol side. So I got to use a lot of that helped out. As well as some very ancient things that are no longer in existence. The reverse telephone book, because we didn't have a black box. Then it went to black box. Then it went to, like, now we can actually query numbers and use security for cell phone. But we actually had a physical book that was like huge. And it was for our area, and you had to go in and you could look up the address or you could look up the number, and it would tell you whose home phone number that was registered to or business, because Yeah, catch this. There were no cell phones when I started. Well, I think there were the ones, the Miami Vice ones that you
Oh
had
yeah,
in your car that were like this big.
the big old bag phones or the brick ones.
Right. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy. So that the Ultra T that we had when I first started was the TDD before TDD progressed.
Hmm.
Physically, we didn't have headsets because that technology wasn't here yet. So we would physically have to pick up the phone, and then if you heard the tones, you had to set it down on the Ultra T, and then you had a little keyboard on there. So it would read the tones and turn that into words, translate it into words. And then, you always had to end up with the Q at the end for question. And
Right.
now, we have all that built into our amazing phone systems. And you can basically just click on the preempt words. So you're doing that, but then you're also entering the call for service because you're needing to know where they're at. So you're dual doing it. We had an alarm board for all of our alarms. So up above my head was all of the banks and major businesses that could have like major spills or different things. And so if an alarm went off, we didn't get a call from alarm company on those. The board just started flashing. Oh, number 2, that's Wells Fargo. They're going to hold up alarm. Let's get that in there. So I'm sure people don't have those anymore. Just so many great, crazy things. The dot matrix printer for 911.
Oh man.
Um, so in a small town, you get a major accident, right? They call it in, and you're getting like 12 calls, but there's only one person, and you have to wait for it to transfer over to CHP. And we're doing all this stuff. And of course, they're calling from the liquor store because they had to get off the freeway because there was no cell phones. So they had to get to the nearest payphone in order to tell you. And then nobody knows where they're at on the freeway. And now you don't have Latin Long to help you out. So you got to be like, where you knew your exits, you knew your mile markers so well because you had to rely on that to be able to help you get help.
Right.
But then in the meantime, you're missing 2 or 3 or 4 911 calls. So you'd have to run in the back room, rip off the dot matrix thing, and take your highlighter real quick and highlight the ones that you didn't get to. So then you could go back and make calls for service to make sure, did you try to call, reference that accident? Well, because there's no Latin Long. You can't tell if that was in the same area, of where it was at. There's no dial back on your phone like, hey, let me call that last number. Let me click on that number and I'll dial. It was crazy. And then at the end of the night, at midnight, you had to put all that together and then tape it back together so it could be filed for the day because that's your 911 record. Oh wait, here we go. that's your 911 record of all the calls that you received, and you had to file those away in case they were needed for court or whatever. And then I'm sitting back with the retrospect of what we do now. Like, I'm absolutely amazed at the technology. And I told you, there's a whole nother, I think, podcast for technology, but I don't know. I just stayed in dispatch and I watched everything progress. And I sit back sometimes because we're constantly being inundated with new technology, right?
Right.
The new MO for technology, and I won't mention any in particular, is like, hey, we're going to get this. Watch our 45-minute demo, download this, and here you go. You're good to go. To where we were used to sitting in a classroom, having somebody show us how to use it, hands-on use it. And now it's like, watch this. And then you're trying to figure out, well, I don't really know how to find out what floor that's on, or let me go back to that 45-minute thing and try to figure it out. And then that kind of hurts me as a person because I want to be able to teach them the best way to use the technology. And sometimes I don't feel that the 45-minute little demo is the right thing. Like, I know that everybody can't come out to every agency and teach that. But sometimes it's just like, hey, what are your questions? And let's do a question and answer. And maybe just show me your screen, like with your phone. What are you having the issue with? And so sometimes it's kind of like you want to teach it, but you don't really know if you're teaching it the correct way because nobody physically, formally taught you. But I think that's the mentality of my age group of people. You still be certified in things, like go and get a certificate to be able to teach somebody how to use that. And
Yeah.
like, click this link, click that link, and it'll just totally show you how to use it. Well, no, because it doesn't troubleshoot what humans do and how humans misuse things and how to, when you can't get something to work. I think that's kind of the breakdown of where we're at now.
I think I'm right there with you. I think there needs to be some of that human factor there. When I was at the last center that I was at, um, we had switched from a DOS type CAD system that we had, where we had to have everything memorized because everything is, fast paced 911. You have to move, but you had to have every incident code memorized, every township code, city code, ORI, all of it, in order for it to actually to be able to go through and actually put it in. So but we loved it. I loved it. It was awesome. The next system that we ended up upgrading to, they kept the command line in our codes and stuff. Of course, you could drag and drop certain cars onto complaints. The thing that was horrible, though, is that for whatever reason, let's say someone was using their own, their laptop, their MDC, it would refresh on our end as well, so it would move like the car to the top. So if you are grabbing one to try to move it and they refreshed almost at the same time, you're moving a completely different unit. And one of those officers would key up on the radio and say, Central, I'm not going to that car deer complaint. Sorry, and then you have to take them off and go back to it. But before we even got to any of that, we actually had someone there physically with a bunch of us in groups showing us everything, how it worked, the different scenarios, how we could combine different command line codes to do different things or do them faster. And that was awesome to be able to have someone there. I feel the same way, to have someone there to be able to show us that, because just like you're saying, you got to be able to go through the troubleshooting. You have to be able to have someone there to ask these questions versus watching something and then not knowing anything else after that, because then what if you can't get a hold of somebody? Then you're kind of screwed.
We went through the same thing you did. So where I came from, we were totally CAD based or CAD line based, and it was very DOS. Like, you had to get the traffic stops in just right, and God forbid you missed one letter wrong or you did something wrong. There's no cutting and pasting and bringing that back up. You have to do it all over again and remember everything. NCIC codes and things to close the calls out with. You have to remember all of that. And then luckily, I feel so blessed because, I came here and they had just got Sunridge Rims. And I hear all these horror stories from these agencies who've had 5, 6, 7 CADs, like in a matter of 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, or in somebody's just their career time. Okay, so I've been so blessed because anytime we haven't, they did come out. They still come out. They send you, they get you set up. They help you set your streets up. They help you do all the stuff that you need to do. But I think that what I really, when we're talking about customer service and how to give back and where to feed in, man, there's just some companies that you're like, right on. Like, when I say that I'm such a big fan, it's right on, because you know what? The click or a phone call, you can have somebody on the phone with you, walking you through it, or sending you, like, do you feel more comfortable with me sending you an email on how to do that? Or would you like me to just dial in and walk you through it the first time, and then you'll know how to do it? And it's just so important. I feel like we lose that. We just expect everybody to have the same level of technology knowledge, and it's just not, it's not always there. And then where are my notes? Like, I want to go back and take notes on that, but that went so fast. I'm trying to make my own notes, but then I can't do the hands-on because it's just very, very, but I feel blessed. I've only had the one CAD, and hopefully I'll finish this time out with the one CAD. But I really feel bad for people who've experienced CAD after CAD after CAD, because I couldn't even imagine all the time and effort that we've put into kind of customizing it the way that we want, having to learn all that all over again. So props to you people. We need a support group for more than 2 CADs, right?
Right.
Maybe that's what page I can start, but then I can't because I've never had to do it. So,
so you've gone through all of this, this training and everything. Do you remember in the beginning, some of the? I want to touch on these couple questions here, and then kind of get to a few other things, virtually. On some of the stuff that we were talking about, kind of also, the email that you had sent as well about a month or so ago. before we get into the wrap up of this episode. But do you remember any of your early calls, or maybe even a call that sticks with you, something like that, from your time that you've been doing this? I mean, you're the lead public safety dispatcher there now. You've been doing this for a while, and you obviously caught the bug right away. And it's something like, just listening to you talk, I can hear the passion, how much you love this job, and it's refreshing. It's awesome.
I do. Okay, well, I was trying to think, like, what was my first call? Oh, who even
Mhm.
knows? That was like 28 years ago. But, I'm sure I was so inundated with the fact that I had to get the DA reports done before the detectives came in the morning. Like, I can't quite remember that. But I was just thinking, like, if I had to say, like, what was the most impactful for me,
Mhm.
I would have to say that I didn't actually take the call, but just prior to me getting married, it was literally like a month before I got married. So all the things that you do, prepping for your wedding and running around and double checking the cake and tasting things, I did none of that. Luckily, I have a great mom who did all that for me because I was so not wanting to leave work. So we had a kidnapping of a 10-year-old little boy, and
Mhm.
we'd never had a kidnapping. I never worked at an agency or even as an explorer, experienced all that went into dealing with a kidnapping. Um, and they ended up finding his body about 3 weeks later in the desert, and he had been murdered. And but just seeing the sense of my heart bled for the dispatcher who took the call, um, because obviously at that time you either had to turn over the tape or the transcripts. And they held off because they said it involved different things to do with prosecution. So they kind of let it go for a little while,
Mhm.
and then they ended up releasing the transcripts and not the actual tapes, um, because she struggled after that. You know how, like, I'm an overthinker, I'll admit it. I need a page for that too, for us overthinkers. She raked herself over the coals after that call, over and over and over. And just the concept of seeing hundreds of off duty police officers showing up every day signing in for an assignment to be able to find this kid, the FBI's involvement, the FBI leads team coming in, setting up their computers and having to fill out lead sheets, and then the lead sheets being put in, and then this crazy thing that the leads machine did to, like, say, oh, we've had that car reported more than one time, or that person reported more than one time. Let's send a team out to this city or this city. Um, you get this false sense of hope that all the good guys are working so hard. We're going to find this kid. How can we not? We're going to find this kid. And that wasn't the case. That
Mhm.
just wasn't the case. And we were all so invested in this. I still am really good friends with the mother. She ended up moving out of California. Um, we stay in contact, and she's a huge person in my life too. When all of this happens and you step up for your wedding day and you're like in this daze, because literally I got married like 7 days after the body was found, and I didn't go home. Like, I went home long enough to sleep and take a
Mhm.
shower and then come back, um, because you just wanted to be part of the good. You wanted to be part of being able to find him, or supporting your team members, and these hundreds of people who are showing up, like, make coffee, make sure that they get signed in. I couldn't focus on anything else. It was just, it really impacted my life, and it really made me realize that there needed to be so many more changes in progression of technology, um, with stuff, um, and just the support that people needed after that. Like, I remember it was unknown, but these ladies came in and they were from some, like, school where you get certified to massage.
Mhm.
So they came in with these sit up chairs and they put them in the locker rooms. And you could take a 5-minute break and you could go in and they'd use that little clicker where they click down your spine
Mhm.
just to try to de stress. And I think that was like such a shocking moment for me, even though I worked for a great department and everybody was very supportive for each other. That this is the first time I've ever seen, like, it's okay to admit that you're not okay. You know, it took that for me to realize all that other stuff, that's crap. for you not talking about your feelings, or you signed on to this to be a patrol officer, you knew what you were getting yourself into, or you're not really, you just got to plug in and do the job. Yeah, we know that's how it happens. You plug in and do the job. But, at the end of the night, or even in the middle of that call, we're still a human being with kids, who hears that mom cry, the grandma who finds her grandson hanging in the garage on Christmas Eve. Like, we're still human beings. And I think that was the first eye opener part to me that, hey, mental health is huge. And maybe that's where I need to advocate. Or technology. We need better technology. We need more staffing. All these things just flooded in after the fact. And my agency was great. We started addressing these things one at a time, on things that we needed, like trying to get more people in working at a time. Because you never know when something's going to happen. You can't really plan it. You can't say, oh, we need 2 people here on this time, but we're going to let 1 person be here on this time. And it did get the ball rolling for things. That was super impactful. And I think until we get to these places in our career, and maybe I'm talking to that dispatcher who's been there 5 years, to where you just really feel like, I'm burnt out. Like, go ahead. I've been burnt out for other things in my career, like the stress and the pressure of taking on more duties and things. But I will tell you, since I've dealt with that, I have never once sit in a console and half butt did anything. That's not my personality anyway. I'm going to go in with 110% because what are we? We're lifesavers, somebody's expecting you to pick up the phone and be highly trained to handle chaos. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Oh, I had a headache. Oh, I had this. Oh, I had that. No, you are their lifeline. There's no room for you just not feeling like it today. Then you need to call out and take a personal day and not come in.
Right.
Because you owe that to people. They're expecting you to come through for them. And I think, even though I never struggled with that, I think when I did start feeling like, this is just, I'm overwhelmed, we're short staffed, we're this or that. Okay, well, I can do what I can do because I'm human, but I'm going to show up every day. I'm going to give my 110%, or maybe some days it's 80, maybe some days it's 75, but I'm going to go full force with whatever percent I can give today. And I'm not going to slack, because you know what? Who knows when the next time somebody's going to decide to take a child like Anthony Martinez? Who knows? And that could be my call. And I'm going to be all caught up in my funk and not be able to function because I'm mad that we're understaffed. Or, you know what? This is not a jail. Nobody's locking us in here. We want to come to work and we want to do what we do and what we're highly trained to do. And hey, how about this part? What we get paid to do, right? We're highly trained. We get paid to show up like rock stars every day. That's what people expect from us. And I know cost and pay is a huge thing right now. I mean, and they're like, oh, you're from California, you can't talk about it. Because I looked, I want to move when I retire. And I looked thinking maybe I could work part-time somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, do they really make that much money? It can't be about the money, because people show up, right? If you make $12 an hour or you make $39 an hour, you show up and you're trained to do what you need to do. And I think that every time in my mind I start wandering to that place of being overwhelmed, I have to remind myself why I do this job. I do this job for Anthony's mom.
Now, I do have a question.
Sure.
As we were talking about mental health and wellness, resilience, all of this. We're talking more about it now, especially. But do you? And I know you said you didn't take this call. However, knowing the mom, do you feel like that kind of gives a little bit of closure in a sense? Because we both know, and a lot of people who are watching and listening right now know as well, but there's a good majority that don't know this. We don't get that closure.
Right.
So in this sense, do you feel like that kind of helps a little bit?
Absolutely. And I think that is, there are pros and cons for working for a large agency versus a small agency. My experience as an explorer working for San Bernardino County, the biggest county in I think, California, versus coming to a small town where we have like 35 sworn, um, is a huge difference. But it gives you the ability to come in and look over the calls and brief over the calls from the following day and read what the closures were. Did they
Mhm.
take that guy? Did that guy live? Um, and I think just with the mom being in there every day and us being a small agency, greeting her at the door and taking her into the briefing room or taking her into the lieutenant's office, um, I think it's a huge difference. And maybe that's why I'm able to channel it and use it in the way that I am. I've never, ever worked a call that's been absolutely devastating and not known the outcome of that. And
Mhm.
I think that that's really huge. And I think as leaders, if we know that somebody has experienced that, then we need to pull some tapes or we need to call the people in and say, hey, would you like to know the outcome of this call? I know that that was very, looking over the log of what happened yesterday, had to be very stressful. So, like, would you like to know? Maybe if we can, we're a small department. I can sometimes rig getting the officer who actually handled that to come in and kind of give you a downplay of what happened. How did it go sideways? What did the perimeter look like? And what's great about a small agency too is working at night. You can't leave to go down and debrief. So a lot of times, if it slows down a little bit, the sergeant will bring the people up, and we have playback. We can play back how the call. They want to hear also how it came in, and I love that about being, and I love the facts that our sergeants are inclusive like that with us, and want us to know the outcome. So I think it made a huge difference. Um,
Yeah, I think it's a big thing as well that we have that continued support system there as well. Those who do ask if you're okay, and especially when you say no, I'm all right, I got this. That they look at you like, are you okay? Because I know for myself, um, I've got a good friend who was a captain at the last county that I was working at, and he just recently retired. And I had to thank him because he gave me that gift of closure. I'd taken a call where an infant had passed away, and I was doing CPR with the mom, and I remember after I got off the call, I was messed up. And my coworker who was sitting next to me, who's actually a childhood friend, we grew up together, went to school together, and then years later we end up working in dispatch together. And she asked me if I was okay, and I said yeah. I said I'm fine, and then she just stared at me, and I said okay, no, I'm not. And she goes, do you want me to have the captain? No, he was a sergeant at the time. Call in. It was actually her husband, and I said, I don't know. I said, yeah, maybe. And I said, I just need to know what happened. So he had called, and I had said the same thing. I said, I just need to know what happened, man. I said, is if I know exactly what happened, I'll be fine. And he actually came up to the center and he sat with me for a while, and we talked. And shout out to you, Chris, for that, um, because I definitely needed it. And I'm glad that I was able to get that closure, to have him there to just kind of talk me through everything. Plus the fact that EMS called in and said when we got there, they were doing textbook CPR. You did everything you could, so that helped out as well.
right, right. And I think that's a responsibility. What we can do, kind of, I don't know, you're a parent, I'm a parent too. So what you see is, how you were raised, and you take the positives and the negatives from the way that you were raised, and you instill some of those things in the way your parenting skills.
Hmm.
It's the same with leaders. We've all been in a situation where we've seen inappropriate leadership, either on the patrol side or our side, or had to work with leaders that were inappropriate, or know people who have. So you draw from that. Like,
Hmm.
if I have the opportunity to be a leader, what am I going to take away from that person that is good? And what am I going to take away that I know I would never do? And I always say, when I was kind of dropped into my position, even though I had lots of years of experience, I wasn't really privy to a lot of the day to day stuff, IT related and things. Um, and what I really did learn is that when you don't know, you're pushed to your resources and your people and your mentors. And then when you don't have mentors, then you got to just really reach outside of your box, and you got to figure it out. But you also know that now, like, hey, that one time I took that call, or um, I remember the hanging of the kid with the grandma because my birthday's on Christmas Eve and it was Christmas Eve. And I was thinking to myself as a mom, or now I'm a grandma, it even makes me think more. Um, and we've experienced suicide in our own family also. So, wow, just like, wow. And nobody asked me. They knew that we had had suicide in our family. My sister-in-law committed suicide when she was only 34 years old, and she was my best friend. So it was really hard. But nobody asked me. Like, they knew I took the call. They knew we lost Erica. Nobody asked me. And that minute, I was just like, whew, things have to change. I
Right.
would never want somebody to go home and have to deal with that. And luckily, I have a great support system. I have an awesome husband um, who worked fire before. He doesn't now, but he kind of gets the gist of it and the stress. But I don't ever want somebody to go home and shoulder that on their own. And maybe that's just the emotional being that I am, or the things that I've gone through with losing so many people to suicide in my life or tragic events, that I just don't want people. Um, I just don't want people to have to shoulder that. And I want them to know it's okay, to where in the past it really wasn't okay to maybe talk about your feelings, or nobody really wanted to know. Or what if I ask and she says, yes, I need help? Then what do I do?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many different pieces to it.
There
It's
is.
but it's definitely getting better, for sure. And as we go into the wrap up of this episode, I've got a couple questions to wrap this episode up, which has been amazing to have you on. I think we could do another couple episodes or even a dispatchers roundtable with you on it. This would be
I have a
really good.
right.
Um, so as we go into the wrap up of this episode, how has the topic of mental health and wellness in 911 dispatch changed? And I guess how do we keep it on track as we continue to share and open up the eyes of everyone to what it is that 911 dispatchers and call takers do on a daily basis, and that they're not alone.
Man, it's changed so much. I think our original conversation that got us started about what we were going to maybe talk about, or was the fact that I remember my first day showing up for patrol, and I was super excited. I had my cute little pen that my dad had bought me, had my name, engraved on it, my engraved handcuffs, like sitting at the briefing table, and nobody comes out. And then the lieutenant walks by, and he's like, "Hey, where's everybody at?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I was here like an hour and a half early because I want my shoes to be shined, and no little, I know they're going to get me the first day. I want to be good. I want to be
Mhm.
squared away." And it was the briefing was being held in the locker room because they hadn't had a woman police officer there for quite a while. So when night shift was going off and day shift was coming on, they would get dressed and they would do their briefing.
Mm.
So I was a little left out. And then I just remember being like told in the academy, and also being told by one of my training officers that, hey, you know what, you signed on for this. You signed on for this. So you're going to hear and see things, and you just need to figure out how to deal with that. So let's start talking about training. Like, that was it. Not like, I'm telling you, I've done this job for 45 years or 30 years, and I've seen and done horrible things. Like, you need to read or exercise, or make sure you're eating right, or all the things that are incorporated into our training now that was never incorporated. And then also, I think it also comes with the mentality. And we're always talking about the different generations and the way people do things. So when I was 21, I came into a department who the average age of officer was 40, 45,
Mhm.
male. um, and the thing is, the way that mental health is going to work, it's going to be inheriting. So the reason why he told me that was because the way he was trained, or maybe even the way he was raised, which I totally get. Being raised Southern and having a very strict dad who is very like authoritative, I guess. you kind of just, it was very paramilitary. You know, this was my chain of command in my house. Dad was the chain of command. And there was no really talking back or let's debate something. And I think that when you hear that thing of like breaking the generational curses, like you hear that sometimes when you have people who drink or abuse or different things that are going on in their life, I think it's the same thing. It's like if we continue to always do things the same way with mental health or technology or leadership, we're not going to progress and we're not doing all the things that our subordinates deserve. They're not going to get that from us. So with mental health, I think that I could have stayed in that same mentality. Okay, don't talk about it, don't do it. And I did for a little while because A, I want to prove myself. You know, I'm a woman. I'm in a man's world right now. I want to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years in, and then working in dispatch and experiencing some other things, nobody ever talked about vicarious trauma. Nobody ever talked about PTSD really, except for military related. And I don't even know if they called it that back then, just he came back from the war. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how they talked about it. So I think keeping the conversation going, not being willing to just accept that's the way it's going to be, and constantly being in the mind frame as leaders is what can we do for our people that wasn't done for us. Like if you could take yourself back, and you're still pretty young and spry, so but if you could take yourself back to the very beginning of your career and think what type of support would have absolutely benefited me into making me such a more well-rounded dispatcher, mentally, physically. Hey, talking about nutrition, um, talking about how to relieve stress, like go exercise, read. Not saying, well, we'll meet for choir practice at the railroad tracks,
Right.
tailgate down and a six pack in the, you know, that definitely was not the way to solve stress. But back then, that was the only way we knew.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just basically not being willing to accept that whole phrase of that's how it's always been in any aspect of our career. And mental health has changed so much. And I just thought about that because as you walk into our center where our lockers are and our little like kind of greeting area, um, I have like 5 different things up. One's like, how are you feeling today? And it's got the little happy faces or whatever. You're responsible for what you bring into the center. And then there's a pull thing for, I found offline somewhere where you can text if you don't want to talk to somebody, but you're having a hard time. These are people who are trained professionals that do what we do. And you can text to them and say, hey, I'm struggling tonight, or I'm having a hard time. And you can actually get a response back from a person. So you don't have to physically pick up a phone if you're working and you're allowed to text in your center. Um, and then the best thing that makes me so proud is that we have a huge thing up for our trauma counselors. Call. Can be anonymous. They give you, assign you a number, call anytime. They'll come out here, which we've never had anybody really have them come out unless it's a critical incident. Or you can go into one of their many offices. And I'm very open about me utilizing that service. And it could be for things that I've gone through, or even the stress and pressure of just being a leader and sometimes feeling like every day I have to fight to not fall short or to keep my nose just above the water. Because, like we were talking about earlier, like I'm on this little raft sometimes I feel like. And I just got pushed away from the big ship, and all these things are piling up on my raft that I need to get done and I need to do, but I also have to work the desk and I have to make sure this person's getting trained because we're short staffed. But then that doesn't stop projects from happening and officers who need radios reprogrammed. And then if you keep letting all that stack up and you don't talk to somebody about it or you don't find a healthy outlet, your raft's slowly going to sink.
Right.
And then you're going to lose an oar. I mean, honestly, I can say I think I've been out there with a half an oar at one or time. Like, how am I ever going to get back to the big ship, the main idea or the main reason why we're doing this? And then you have to remind yourself things like Anthony, my sister-in-law Erica. Like maybe if she would have reached out to somebody or had a text number or had something up at her job that said, you know, hey, call anytime anonymously. Like, we just have to constantly have to figure out what we can do to be better and do better every single day.
Perfect. Thank you. so much for being on and sharing your story and your insight on all of this. And I look forward to having you back. This has been awesome. We went over an hour. It didn't even feel like it.
Well, could I just, I'm a big talker. I'm sorry. But I think what I really wanted to just let everybody know, like my takeaway from all of our conversations and the things that we do is never pass up the opportunity to speak life into somebody, to be a mentor, to give back and be kind. Because you never know, your one word of kindness might be the only word of kindness that person's heard all week long. And not everybody has supportive husbands or moms or brothers or sisters. Some people have nobody. Your work people can be sometimes your only people. And then just know the extent of and the span of your actions. That one word, like I love that picture of the ripple. Like, you know, you throw a little rock in and it ripples because you have no idea. And then I think back the ripples of effect that happened in my life. Pastor Jim, the church advisor, like what if he would have never gave us that talk about passion? Like, would my life have taken a different path of that? He would have never taken us there to where I realized I couldn't do chemistry as well as I needed to, and I needed to push on and get involved somewhere else. Or like somebody actually instilling in me how important it was to serve our country and to serve our people. Like never lose sight of how important that is. And then just remembering how great social media is. You can totally use that. If you don't have somebody, I'm telling you, now you're my people. I'm just letting you know you're going to be my people. But
I'm all about it.
I have so many people, and you all know who you are out there. Because I'm just gonna say that I found through Dare to Be Great, through different social medias, Leaders Under the Headset. And I just have to say, Amy Patton, Sugar Land, Texas PD. If I could totally pick up and move, I would want you to be my boss. She's like 30 years old, I think, or super early 30s. And she speaks so much life into me. And you think you have 28 years experience. She came from a bad situation and came into another bad situation. And just seeing how she prospers and handles things and the way that she can still find time to just return an instant message or speak life into me when I'm feeling a little down, absolutely amazing. I met a great lady, and her name's Heather Von Joyner. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet with her. And I believe she's with Franklin County. But I had a really bad month as a new leader. And I kind of just put out some stuff like, how would you deal with this? And she's just like, girl, let's do a FaceTime. So then I got back to my Southern roots, like, suck it up. Let's eat some collard greens and let's talk about how to do what you know you need to do. How are you going to get there? And sometimes we just need those people, and not having anybody here who knows my job or experience the things that I'm experiencing. Keisha, with Leaders Under the Headset, all those great things you post every day, every single day, those things. Girl, that is where I'm at. I read that and I'm like, that is where I'm at. She knew what was going on in my brain today because she posted that exactly for me. And then Marlene Chisholm, she posts the most amazing things right when I need it, like right when I need it. And then you just think, what if somebody, like, what's going to happen when I leave? I hope one day somebody just says, hey, Vickie checked on me that one time, or she answered my instant message, or she accepted my friendship on Facebook and gave me some really sound advice, or I didn't feel like I was in my flotation device with just a half an oar. And, you know, be that oar for somebody and just, I don't know, I've had so many people impact my life and forever touch my heart. And I just want to do that. And I want to be that for other people.
Man, that was amazing.
Sorry, I just felt like I needed to say all that.
No. That was great. No, that was perfect. That was perfect. Thank you so much for saying that and giving these shout outs and everything. You know, a lot of times, you know, everyone is doing so much stuff, and you know, sometimes we don't get a chance to reflect on what it is, you know, that we're doing. And so for them to be able to hear that from you and how much they've they've helped you and others listening, to these stories and really being inspired to reach out more. That's what this is all about. So thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story. Thank you for being on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Now, I'll be right back here with you in just 1 second. For those who are watching right now or listening, and you have any comments, questions, and you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, and that is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy. Thank you to both of you very much, and especially to the patrons. Thank you so very much for the support, for following. If you want to become a patron as well, you can check us out. That is patreon.com/WTT podcast. All of the Dispatcher Roundtable episodes are getting an audio version, and they are exclusive to patrons. That's a perk that they get, as well as Open Mic Live, which is every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And any of the live broadcasts that I'm doing at conferences, there will be an audio version, and that will go to them as well. For those live ones, there are episodes that I'm doing, but then there's also live broadcasts that I'm doing from each conference. So you can check that out there. There's also discounts to the store, swag, t-shirts, all types of stuff. So thank you so much for that, patrons. And then this episode can be seen on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube, and you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.